She was out with someone she trusted. It wasn't a dangerous night. It wasn't a risky place. And by morning she was dead. The last person to see her said nothing was wrong. That statement wouldn't survive the investigation. Her name was Lauren Astley. Lauren Astley was 18 years old. Born July 18, 1993. She was at an age defined by forward motion. Senior year. College applications. Plans that existed half on paper and half in imagination. Friends remember her as bright, social, and deeply present. Someone who laughed easily, who showed up for people, who moved through her days with the confidence of someone beginning to understand who she was becoming. Lauren had grown up in Wayland, a town known for its calm streets, its schools, its sense of predictability. It was the kind of place where routines mattered, where parents expected their children home at certain times, where neighbors recognized one another's cars, where danger felt distant, abstract. She was close to her family. She stayed connected to friends. Her life followed patterns that made sense to those around her. School during the week, time with friends, conversations about the future that felt urgent and exciting at the same time. There was nothing unstable about her days. Nothing hidden. Nothing that suggested she was at risk. Lauren had recently gone through a breakup. It was painful but not unusual. The end of a relationship at 18 is often framed as a moment of growth, a step toward independence. Those close to her did not describe fear. They did not recall alarm. Just the emotional weight of change, handled quietly the way many young people learn to do. That matters, because it shaped how everyone understood what came next. The day Lauren died did not begin with disruption. She was at home, in a place she knew, a place she trusted, a place meant to be safe. There were no calls for help, no neighbors reporting disturbance, no immediate signs that anything had gone wrong. From the outside, the house remained still, and then the silence stretched. When Lauren failed to respond, concern did not arrive all at once. It arrived gradually, a message unanswered, time passing, the subtle realization that something was off, not dramatically but unmistakably. By the time authorities were contacted, the shift had already occurred. What had been a normal day was no longer normal. What had felt safe no longer felt certain. And as investigators crossed the threshold of the Astley home, one truth became unavoidable. Whatever had happened to Lauren did not come from chance or coincidence. It came from someone who knew exactly where to find her. The answers would not be found outside the house. They were already inside. To understand how Lauren Astley's life intersected with violence, investigators had to look carefully, not broadly, at the people who moved closest to her in the days before her death. Not strangers, not chance encounters, but familiarity. Lauren had recently ended a relationship with Nathaniel Fujita, her former boyfriend. They were young. Their relationship had existed within the same social orbit. School, mutual acquaintances, shared routines that naturally overlap in a small community. To outsiders, it appeared unremarkable. A teenage relationship that had run its course. But proximity does not disappear when a relationship ends. It lingers. Fujita still knew Lauren's schedule. He knew her home. He knew when she would be alone. This was not unusual information. It was the kind of knowledge that accumulates quietly over time, through trust rather than surveillance. That mattered, because access is rarely dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It exists in familiarity. Doors that don't feel locked, routines that feel predictable, moments that don't raise alarm because they've happened before. Friends would later say there had been tension following the breakup, but not chaos. No public arguments, no obvious escalation, no moment that demanded intervention. If anything, the situation appeared contained, emotionally difficult but stable. That perception shaped how everyone moved forward. Lauren did not change her routines. She did not alter her habits. She did not express fear. From the outside, the separation seemed to mark an ending, not a beginning. But investigators are trained to question what appears settled. They look at what changes and what doesn't. They examine how people respond to loss, rejection, and control, not just in public moments but in private ones. And as detectives reconstructed the days leading up to Lauren's death, one pattern stood out. There was only one person whose presence would not have raised suspicion. Only one person whose arrival would have felt familiar rather than alarming. Only one person whose access required no force. That realization narrowed the field, not because of motive alone, but because of opportunity shaped by trust. Still at this stage, uncertainty remained. There were no witnesses placing Fujita at the home during the critical window. No immediate forensic clarity. No definitive timeline established yet. What investigators had instead was a growing sense that whatever had happened did not unfold randomly. It followed the contours of a relationship that had ended, but not cleanly. And that raised a quiet, unsettling question. When a relationship ends, how do you know when it's truly over? Because sometimes what looks like distance on the surface masks a closeness that still carries power. And inside the Astley home, that power may have been enough to change everything. The morning Lauren Astley was found began without urgency. There were no frantic calls in the night. No reports of a disturbance. No neighbors describing noise or alarm. From the outside, the house in Wayland looked exactly as it always had. It was only when Lauren failed to respond, failed to answer calls, failed to emerge, that concern sharpened into action. When her family went to check on her, the shift from ordinary to irreversible happened quietly, behind a closed door. Inside the home, investigators were met with stillness. Lauren was found deceased. The scene immediately signaled that this was not a natural death, nor an accident. From that moment forward, the focus moved decisively toward reconstruction, understanding not just what happened but how and when. Detectives began with the basics. They secured the scene. They documented every room. They preserved what could still speak. There was no sign of forced entry. That fact alone carried weight. It suggested that whoever entered the home did so without resistance, or without needing to break in at all. That observation echoed what investigators had already begun to suspect. Access was not gained through violence, but through familiarity. Forensic teams worked methodically. They collected physical evidence from the immediate area where Lauren was found. They documented patterns that spoke to movement and struggle, without sensationalizing what could not be undone. The goal was clarity, not spectacle. At the same time, investigators began building a timeline. They traced Lauren's last confirmed communications. They examined phone activity. They looked for gaps, periods of silence that stood out because they were unusual. Lauren's phone stopped showing normal activity. No outgoing messages. No routine check-ins, no late-night browsing or early morning signals. The silence was abrupt. An abrupt silence rarely happens by chance. Attention turned to those who had spoken with Lauren most recently, and to those who would have had reason to see her. Nathaniel Fujita was quickly identified as a person of interest, not because of assumption but because of proximity. Detectives located him and brought him in for questioning. At first, Fujita's account attempted to distance himself from the scene. He acknowledged the prior relationship. He described the breakup. He suggested separation, finality, closure. But timelines do not bend easily. As questioning continued, inconsistencies began to surface. Small ones at first. Details that didn't align with phone records. movements that didn't fit the physical evidence, statements that shifted subtly when examined closely. Investigators pressed, not aggressively but patiently. They returned to the same moments. They asked the same questions again. They allowed silence to do its work. Eventually, the structure of the account collapsed. Nathaniel Fujita confessed. He admitted to killing Lauren Astley inside her home. The confession was not the end of the investigation. It was a confirmation of what the evidence had already begun to suggest. Detectives corroborated his statements with forensic findings from the scene. The details aligned. Timeline held. There was no longer uncertainty about what had happened. But even with a confession, investigators remained meticulous. Confessions can explain, but they must also be supported. Every claim was checked, every detail tested, and the evidence held. By the time the case moved forward, what remained unresolved was no longer who or how, but why. Why familiarity had turned fatal. Why a relationship that had ended still carried such destructive force. Why a quiet house had become the site of a loss that would echo far beyond its walls. Those questions would follow the case into court, and they would not be easy to answer. With Nathaniel Fujita's confession on record and the forensic evidence fully documented, the case moved out of investigation and into the legal system. There were no alternate suspects, no competing theories, no lingering doubt about responsibility. The question before the court was no longer what happened. It was how the justice system would respond. Fujita was formally charged with first-degree murder. Prosecutors outlined the case in a measured, methodical way, focusing not on emotion but on facts. They presented the confession. They presented the physical evidence recovered from Lauren's home. They reconstructed the timeline, showing how access, proximity, and intent intersected in a single, irreversible act. The defense did not dispute that Fujita had killed Lauren. Instead, they focused on framing, on mental state, on circumstance, on interpretation. But the structure of the case was firm. The confession was voluntary. The evidence was consistent. The sequence of events left little room for reinterpretation. The trial moved forward without spectacle. There were no dramatic revelations, no surprise witnesses, no last-minute reversals. What unfolded in the courtroom was a quiet accounting of loss. Jurors heard about Lauren's final hours. They learned how the crime unfolded inside a place meant to be safe. They were asked to weigh intent, responsibility, and consequence. After deliberation, the verdict was unanimous. Nathaniel Fujita was found guilty of first-degree murder. The sentence was life in prison without the possibility of parole. A sentence that reflected both the severity of the crime and the permanence of its impact. For Lauren Astley's family, the verdict brought legal finality, but not emotional resolution. No sentence could restore what had been taken. No ruling could rewind time to the moment before everything changed. Lauren was 18 years old. She was a daughter, a friend, a young woman standing at the edge of adulthood, with plans still forming and possibilities still open. Her life ended not because of chance, but because someone she once trusted refused to accept an ending. In the years since, Lauren's case has remained a quiet but powerful reminder of how danger can emerge from familiarity. How endings, when not respected, can escalate into violence. And how warning signs, often subtle, can carry devastating weight when ignored. Wayland returned to its routines. The house stood. The streets stayed quiet. Life continued around the absence. But Lauren Astley did not fade into statistics. She is remembered for who she was before the crime. For her youth. For her promise. For the life she never had the chance to live fully. Her story is not defined by how it ended, but by the truth that followed. Accountability was established. Responsibility was named. and a young woman's life was acknowledged with care and with gravity. If you found this case fascinating, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. We post crime case videos nightly. Until next time.